Welcome back. Now let's talk about the flooding that is currently ravaging 33 out of the 36 states in Nigeria. Now, these states are experiencing unprecedented flooding. Communities are submerged, farmlands washed away, and over 600 persons have reportedly died from the devastating flood that has displaced over a million people now following the destruction of their homes. Many parts of the country, especially the coastal areas, usually experience flooding yearly, but this year's flood has been described as the worst in more than a decade. The flood has washed away the country's food-growing regions and flooded its oil-producing Niger Delta region. Many of the flooded communities are without power. Critical infrastructure such as schools, healthcare centers, police stations, and banks are also out of operation due to the natural disaster. The federal government says, though they received early warning signs of the flood, they never foresaw this level of destruction. And although some have blamed the disaster on the release of excess water from the Lagdo Dam in neighboring Cameroon, authorities now say the water released from the dam only contributes 1% to the disaster, adding that 80% of the situation is as a result of ceaseless rainfalls. With many communities now cut off from the rest of the nation, there are concerns that the situation might persist till the end of the rainy season, and that paints a very, very bleak picture. So what exactly is the impact of this disaster on the people, and what does it mean for the economy? Joining me to discuss this further is Sulaiman Arigbabu, who is the Executive Director, Human and Environmental Development Agenda Header. Sulaiman, thank you very much for joining us on the program. You are involved in climate change advocacy. Help us to understand what exactly is going on at the moment as far as this flooding is concerned.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for having me, and good evening. Yeah, indeed, you've said quite a bit about the current flooding experience we're having in Nigeria. So many people are already devastated. As it's been said, this is since 2012, this is the worst flooding that the country has witnessed. So many farmlands already overrun, communities displaced. Some have taken refuge in IDP camps, while some have, relocated essentially out of their natural commune, maybe to some other states, to families and friends. So it's an ongoing situation. It's not yet abating. We are expecting more flood. Lagos has raised alarm that some parts of Lagos will be witnessing flood. And that is not to say that Lagos has not been witnessing flood. For instance, each time it rains, there are flash floods. But the kind of flood we are talking about now is one that is exacerbated by the intensity of rainfall location, by changing in climatic condition. For instance, the rains that ought to pour in a matter of months sometimes come within a few days, and so it's overwhelmed our canal system, our rivers, and unfortunately the states of management of these water bodies and channels is not prepared, for the level of experience in flooding that we are witnessing now. However, that's quite unfortunate because this did not come to us as a surprise. At least it should not have come to us as a surprise. The relevant agencies have given the scientific predictions. Earlier this year, the Nigeria Meteorological Agency, NIMET, in February, released their seasonal climate predictions. And acting upon that, the Nigeria Hydrological Services also released their own advisory as well, stating that there will be flooding and that it will be massive. There's going to be a lot of rain. However, it does not appear that much was done about it by various strata of governments in Nigeria. And this is where we are at now. Lives have been lost, livelihoods have been destroyed, properties destroyed. Some may never recover even though they survive. And of course, the country is going to witness some terrible times in terms of food security, in terms of public health concern, in terms of safety, and perhaps in terms of mental health of many who have been touched who are victims, you know, and we are all victims really, it's just to different degrees. So it's quite an unfortunate situation.
I mean, from your own understanding of climate issues now, some people have said, look, and which is true, that this is the worst in a decade, but do you think that even the worst is yet to come? Because this is obviously bad than what we have seen in the past, but from what we're hearing, that the worst may still come.
Of course. So the whole idea why we say that we're experiencing climate extremes is that, I mean, the whole essence of the climate change is that it's unpredictable. So in some years, you will not have enough rains, and in some years, you have extreme rains. You have extreme weather conditions. So you take beyond even Africa, you look at Europe, and in some years, you see extreme heat during their summer, such that people die out of heat stroke. And in same year, you see extreme winter. You know, so the world is still trying to understand the ramifications of, I mean, the manifestation of climate change. What we know is that we have distorted the natural balance. Climate change on its own is natural. It's something that would happen whether we tamper with the ecosystem or not. But it usually would happen over a longer period at a much slower pace. And the earth has a way, our ecosystem services have a way of counterbalancing these changes such that it doesn't have such devastating effect on humanity, on flora and fauna as we are having. But unfortunately, because of anthropogenic causes to climate change, that is what we as human beings are doing, how we are increasing greenhouse gases, how we are even depleting the Earth's capacity to counterbalance the upset that we are making. We are experiencing climate change at a faster rate. We're experiencing climate change at a much more devastating rate. And unfortunately for countries like Nigeria, for countries in underdeveloped, developing and small island countries, our infrastructures are overwhelmed easily when these things come. And people's lives, once devastated, there's not adequate social system to help them come back after the extreme weather events, the climate hazards that they experience. So, to your questions, I tell you, from year to year, we cannot tell what's going to happen. We are better prepared for the worst. And that is that what is going to happen next may be worse than what we are witnessing now. We can only reduce the level of devastating effect on us by replanning our lives, replanning our lifestyle options, replanning our communities, empowering our people to understand what is happening, what may happen, and not just giving them information that push them into panic, that makes them become paranoid, but giving them information that is helpful, that helps them to locate themselves within the actions that need to be taken. And, you know, that's the kind of thing we need to do as a people, which we are not doing yet. So a lot is yet to happen. We're talking flooding now, but we know that we equally have issues with drought. This year, the dry spell went rather long, and many farmers already were devastated by that, you know. And but these are things that science have been able to help to profile solutions that could reduce the impacts of this extreme weather event. But is Africa, countries like Nigeria, taking advantage of science, taking advantage of advancements in knowledge and technology, you know, to build resilience into our various systems, our food system, our economic system, our energy system, our transportation system? Are they resilient enough? Can we do much better? Of course.
Let me ask you this question before I let you go. You look at some of these areas that have been impacted seriously, I mean, most of them, from some of the videos that we've been showing, most of these areas are, you know, floodplains, if you like, people building around floodplains, people building very close to the river, around river banks and all of that. So these areas are the most impacted. What lesson do you think we can learn from this? Because look at, for instance, the video we're showing now. This is a community around the bank of a river, very close to the river. You look at some of these areas, they are clearly floodplains, but people have built on them, and now the water has come in. So what lesson do you think we can take away from this?
So what needs to happen, and the lesson that we should learn, is that things, because sometimes when you talk to people, they tell you, oh, people have lived there for millennia. People lived by the Atlantic Ocean, people built on stilts, people live in coastal communities. Yes, it's true. But we are witnessing change. And that's the most difficult thing to communicate, to tell somebody that how your forefathers experienced it, how they passed it on to you, things may be changing at a rate that we are forced to notice. In the past, the rate of change may not be as much as we are saying it. So it's important to communicate that to people. But more importantly is that government needs to take leadership. They need to become much more responsive and responsible. There are technological solutions. There are policy decisions that can help to reduce the hazards that people are experiencing. Don't just tell people to move. Communities naturally will stay along these areas. What you need to do is to build in resilience into them. Okay, so people know that when you tell people to move, for instance, or when sometimes you can have even flash flooding, people should already know. You should have trained people, get them involved in disaster risk reduction, have in every community a place that is, you take, for instance, the best scenario, that 100 years, what kind of level of water level can we experience? And you have some facilities that are above that. And that's why you see that during Hurricane Katrina and the rest of you find people taking refuge in Super Bowls. These are big stadiums. You need to have facilities. It could be schools, it could be places of worship, but this will be places that people know that if you need to move quickly, these places will receive you. But beyond that, even if you are able to relocate people in terms of their habitat, how about our agricultural system? How about their farms? We still need these places to farm. And don't forget, this flooding came to us just at the verge of the harvest season for 2022. But we could have averted this with right information by probably asking people, oh, take this variety. It's going to mature earlier. It's going to give you more yield. You would have harvested before the flood comes. There are so many things that could have been done to reduce the impact. Okay, the damage has been done. How can we ensure that next year, next season, we do not communicate condolences again to people? We communicate warnings, we communicate actions, and we work with them to reduce this kind of devastation. It's quite unfortunate, but we can do much better.
And you think, the government, you look at the governments across the states and all of that, that it would appear the governments have been overwhelmed.
I wonder why they are overwhelmed, because they have really not done much. And if they are overwhelmed, it is because they did not take the right action. I give you a little example. In 2012, when we had the whitewater flooding, after the incidents, the governors requested that the president release money. 17 billion naira was given to the various states. They were classified into A, B, C, thereabout, to help their people. And I tell you, some farmers got as little as 500 naira. And many did not get a dime till tomorrow. There was no interrogation of that scenario. Nothing happened. It went away. But imagine if that same amount of money 6 months earlier, 8 months earlier, was given to the National Emergency Management Agency and the various state emergency management agencies to empower people, to communicate, to help people identify what to do, to have an early warning system in place that would reduce the, we would have had less condolences to convey because we did the right thing at the right time. So what needs to happen? Right now, as we speak in Nigeria, you have Kaduna State, you have Borno State, you have Lagos State, you have the Federal Capital Territory, who have properly structured emergency management agencies. And then you have the NEMA, of course. All the other states have not invested in disaster risk reduction. And this is the new reality. This is the new world order. We need to be prepared for disasters, and we need to invest, because investing in disaster risk reduction, investing in building resilience into your various systems is much less in terms of cost than if you had to help people to recover after each devastation. That would be much more expensive. So the states have not done enough. They didn't act on these warnings. They didn't, and yes, we know that the federal government ought to do much, because we are in a country that a lot of things are centralized. Water body management is centralized and all of that. The federal government could have done much better, so the federal government did not do enough. But in terms of helping to reduce the level of devastation that we saw, that we are seeing now, the states could have done much better. They did not act. They went to sleep, and this is quite unfortunate.
Sulaiman Arugbabu, Executive Director, HEDA, thank you very much for your time, and thank you for talking to us.
Thank you too.
Thank you so very much. All right, we'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll look at the economic impact now of this flooding on Nigeria. Stay with us, don't go away. Opinions are free, facts are sacred, but truth is universal. How, in practical terms, can we, for instance, de-escalate the tension?
President must see himself as the President of the Federal Republic.
We know where the enemy is. 3 places. The Lake Chad Basin, the border area between Nigeria and Cameroon, and then the Sambisa Forest.
On DEJI360, we give you a complete dose of everything. Opinion, facts, and undiluted truth.
I hardly believe what politicians say in this part of the world.
A new Nigeria is possible, a future is possible.
We delve into the issues, dissect it so that you can understand it, use it to take action.
I don't think there's any need for any governor to look for grant for ranching.
DEJI360, dissecting the issues.